Good morning. My name is Ben Klang. I am here today. I'm actually founder of a company called Mojo Lingo, based here in Atlanta, which was awesome because I got to sleep in my own bed every night this week. So you can find me on Twitter and GitHub. I'm B Klang, but I'm actually here today in my capacity as the leader of the Adhearsion project, which is what we're here to talk about, that and supergluing things. If you have anything broken, let me know and I'll fix it later. All right, so first, I have some slides here. I'm not going to spend too much time on these because the meat of this presentation are the demos. And so hopefully, I have a fairly, shall we say, risky demo coming up. There are lots of pieces connected together with spit and baling wire, and we'll see those in a minute. But let me get through the slides. We'll go to the demo. So first, let me tell you about what Adhearsion is. Adhearsion, so the guy who created Adhearsion was a gentleman named Jay Phillips, a Ruby developer. He called it adhesion that you can hear, which is kind of a strange name, but his intent was to indicate that you can glue asterisk to everything else. Adhearsion itself is a voice application development framework. It's open source. It's written in Ruby, so most of you here probably at least have heard of Ruby on Rails if you have not actually worked with it. Actually, so by show of hands, how many people here who have worked with Ruby, have written a line of Ruby code? Great, okay, awesome. And how many have heard of Adhearsion? Most of you, cool. All right, well, if I repeat myself, just throw something at me. So Adhearsion is an independent project. It's a standalone piece. It does integrate with lots of things, including Rails. It borrows a lot of concepts from Rails. So if you're familiar with developing in Rails, this will be right at home to you. Thanks to Ruby, it's platform agnostic, so it runs anywhere Ruby does, which means it'll run in Windows, Mac, Linux, Solaris. I have tried all of these. It does actually work. It also runs very well under the JVM using JRuby. It does have a nice small footprint, even under load, but it does scale up pretty large, and we're continuing to do work on that to even improve how far that can go. And to be buzzword compliant, we are cloud friendly and password prompt friendly. And what that means is when you write your Adhearsion application, we have ways for you to deploy it to the cloud. So your entire application runs on something like Heroku or Cloud Foundry, which makes that many fewer servers that you have to manage, which is really nice. So Adhearsion can be applied a lot of ways. And this list is going to be familiar to this room. Being at Astricon, you guys have probably worked with at least one of these use cases, if not all of them. Call center workflow, Salesforce automation, conferencing applications, translation services and IVRs, polling and robocalling, this being an election year. I've heard a fair amount of stories about these. We are not responsible for all of them, I promise. Other ways to use it, so those are the sort of bread and butter, right? That's what telephony is most known for, but you can do some kind of other cool stuff with it. Epic Scale Public Art Project. This was actually a real-world art exhibit in Montreal. This guy with a team got a projector and projected on the side of a building 5 stories tall, musical staffs. And people from the street could dial in, and they could, using their keypad, put notes onto the staff and turn them on and off. And the music would be in a constant loop. And it would be constantly changing as different people would move around different parts of the music and turn notes on and off. And that was run with Asterisk. I think Asterisk was running in California, and Adhearsion was running in Amazon, and this thing was running in Montreal. It's pretty cool. Video games on billboards. I didn't actually see this myself, but someone told me that it was done. There was a billboard in Florida that you could actually call in and play a game with other people who had called into it. Adhearsion has been used in the green zone in Baghdad for identity, for biometrics. I don't know anything about this other than I was told it was done. I would love to know more, but I suspect it's classified. And war dialing. So a year ago at Adhearsion Conf, we had a guy come up and he works for the Department of Defense. And he couldn't tell me how they were using this, but that they were. They were war dialing, and they did the whole thing with Adhearsion. They actually did a whole bunch of audio file processing after the fact. But let me caveat that by saying this may be illegal, so don't do it. So a little bit about the history of Adhearsion and where it runs. It was originally written in 2006, and it reached a stable point in 2008 running on Asterisk. We've had production customers at least since then. That actually predates me. I joined the project in 2010. Then in 2011, thanks to sponsorship with Voxeo, we added support for Prism, which is it's an enterprise-grade, clusterable, scalable, fault-tolerant commercial engine for telephony. And then this summer, actually, we announced support for FreeSwitch. So the cool thing about this is that you write your application one time, you write it to the framework, and then your application is portable across any of these backends. And this isn't just theoretical. We actually have a customer who is a MVNO, so they are a cell phone operator, and the Adhearsion application handles everything. It handles their billing, handles connecting calls to each other, handles voicemail, and we were able to pick up the application. It was running on Asterisk and drop it on FreeSwitch with no code changes. So that's pretty cool, very powerful stuff. So here's the architecture of Adhearsion at a high level. You have the telephone call that comes in, and it connects through one of the 3 supported telephony backends, Asterisk, FreeSwitch, or Prism. Each of those exposes some kind of remote control API. Since we're at Astricon, we'll talk about Asterisk. We primarily use the Asterisk Manager interface. And we used to use AGI directly. We now use a variant of AGI called async AGI, primarily because we needed asynchronous control of all of our calls, because we can do more than one thing at a time. So all of those APIs are then exposed down to Adhearsion. Now the cool thing is, when you learn Adhearsion, you're writing Ruby code, and I'll get into more about what that looks like in a minute. But you don't have to know AGI, you don't have to know AMI. In fact, you don't really need to know Asterisk. We have a project that will set up a virtual machine running Asterisk and Adhearsion for you, and you just start writing Ruby. It's pretty easy. So the APIs are exposed to the Adhearsion process, and then once it gets into the Ruby, we have out-of-the-box or plugins available to connect to all of these things. I mentioned Ruby on Rails earlier, SQL, databases, obviously, everybody loves a little database. I happen to like LDAP, so I stuck LDAP in the slide. XMPP is really fun, getting your telephone system to send you instant messages, or even better, to make routing decisions for your calls based on whether you're signed in or signed out, or away, or at lunch, or whatever. And of course, anything web, which is why we're here today to talk about Supergluing Asterisk to the web. Before I get into that, I do want to give some examples. In conversation on Tuesday night, someone was saying, well, you know, it sounds cool what you're doing, but I can do it all in extensions.conf. And A, yeah, maybe. And B, I don't think you want to. So this is a contrived example. It goes to, and I understand this is using MySQL. There are other ways to do this. There are lots of ways to do this, in fact. This is just one way that I have actually seen in the wild. So this connects to the database. It looks up the caller's name based on the caller ID, the number, and then uses Kepstrel to say hello. It has a lot of inherent problems, among them the fact that you have to open a brand new database connection for every call, which doesn't scale particularly well. It's also not the fastest thing in the world. There's also a little bit of SQL injection right here if you have callers who can set their own caller ID. It's unlikely, but it can happen. So here's a better way to do it. This is an example of a little tiny bit of Ruby code that does effectively the same thing. Take the caller ID. This person with a capital P is, in Ruby terminology, a model, and it maps to a database table. So we use that to look up the person by their caller ID, and then we speak back to them this pretty string. I'm so glad you called. We'll connect you now. Just hang on. So I also wanted to show you what this looks like in context. There's a little bit more to it. Obviously, if you wanted to have a complete call, at the top we'll answer the line. We'll play, please wait while we figure out who you are, do our greeting, and then we'll actually place the dial. So this is an example of writing a voice application with Ruby. It's really very straightforward. So the moral of the story is, it's Ruby. Be happy. One more example, just to kind of drive home the point that you really don't want to be doing this in extensions.conf. This is actually my code, so feel free to laugh at it. I wrote this, and I was trying, believe me. This is right before I discovered Adhearsion. This may have been the thing that put me over the edge. But what this is a call screening loop. The idea is when you call out, you want the person receiving the call to be prompted, press 1 to accept the call, or press 2 to go to voicemail or hang up. What makes this so difficult is actually this stuff here. This stuff here. So if you can't see all the way in the back, that's parentheses, curly brace, parentheses, curly brace, parentheses, back to back. And you can't break that up across multiple lines. You're just kind of stuck with it. And then you get these crazy loop counters and assignments. So extensions.conf is great if you want configuration, but it's not a programming language. And once you start wanting to do things more sophisticated, you want to use a real programming language. And just to keep the comparisons, this is line by line a reimplementation of what you just saw using Ruby. To me, this is a lot more readable. If no other reason than you can split things across multiple lines. It's also a lot shorter. And if you were not using, these last two lines are specifically for compatibility with Asterisk. If you weren't using Asterisk dial plan, you could actually get rid of those two lines as well. So I promise this is my last heavy text slide. The power tools that Adhearsion gives you are things like using AMI to interrupt long blocking operations, such as dial. I think I'll come back to that one. So other things, dynamically changing Asterisk's configuration. Let's say you wanted to add a conference room or a voicemail box or a sit peer. There are lots of ways to skin this cat. Last year I showed a demo where we actually used Manager Interface to dynamically add contexts to Adhearsion's dial plan. And you can certainly do that. I don't necessarily recommend it. The other approach is to use Asterisk real-time and write directly to the database. Both work just fine. Telling Asterisk to reload its configuration files if you've made an external change. So interrupting blocking operations. If you have a dial, this is a real-world use case. We had a calling card customer, and they wanted the ability to allow their customers to dial in, authenticate, and then call back out. And then when they finished the call, they wanted to disconnect the far end and let the inbound caller make another outbound call, basically allowing them to not go through the process of logging in again. The problem with dial, whether you do it in dial plan or whether you do it in AGI, is that it's blocking. So once you fire off that dial, you're stuck. There's nothing more you can do. With Adhearsion, you get access to AMI and AGI, and we can actually cancel the dial. And we don't even have to drop the caller, right? We can disconnect them, stick one on hold, interact with the other caller, and put them back together, or add them all to a conference. And this is relatively easy to do. It's probably the most common thing we do with Adhearsion because it's so hard to do almost any other way. And this last one, this is just fun. It's also kind of handy for testing text-to-speech. It's the Adhearsion console. It gives you the ability to actually jump into a call as it's going on, take control, and then throw commands at it in real time. So we've used it to test text-to-speech, to test intonation, spelling of words, that kind of thing. OK, so here's the dangerous part, the first of many. We're going to do a demo, a live demo, live coding. Let me monitor my video on the monitor. All right. So first, I want to show you. Is that big enough in the back? It's good? OK. Really, really, really simple, bare bones, hello world. When the call comes in, it'll hit this method called run. We will answer the line, and we will speak, hello there, I'm glad you called. So make sure we have sound. And I'm going to make sure my Adhearsion process is running. I'm going to restart it just to be safe. OK. And I'm going to call.
Hello there. I'm glad you called.
All right, real simple, right? Not all that remarkable. But we have SugarCRM installed. Ta-da! SugarCRM, you guys heard of SugarCRM? Yeah, lots of nodding, good, OK. SugarCRM, open source CRM, has lots and lots of data. This is loaded with the demo data, so that none of this is real except my logo. But let me just show you. So for example, if we look at contacts, our first contact here is a guy named Aaron Seaman. And you can see his phone number right here. And can you see that? I know that's small. Let me embiggen it. There you go. And there's also, you can see that this particular person is assigned to the rep, Sally Bronson. So now we like our customers. So let's greet them. Let's be sort of more friendly. Now, I am going to cheat. I wrote these code samples earlier, so I'm going to copy and paste. The first thing we're going to do is load the Ruby library for SugarCRM. One of the big advantages of Ruby is there's an enormous repository of pre-built functionality that you don't have to write. And so one of those things is an integration with SugarCRM. Yes, I know. So we've loaded the SugarCRM connectivity. Now, what we need to do is actually connect up to the back end, which we will do here. All right, so that line is bigger. What this line does is you give it the URL of your Sugar instance, the username and password. You can't get to this, so you can't get my data. And we'll do one more thing. Let's take a look and find the contact. Oops. This line. Let's look up the contact by the caller ID. Now, I have fixed my soft phone to pretend to have the caller ID of this person. Now, I do have to admit there is one gotcha here, and that is that SugarCRM stores data in a really weird format. It expects the caller ID to be stored with parentheses and spaces, which is kind of dumb, but we will work around it. So what this little helper method does is it goes and it takes your real phone number and pads it out so that it is in the format that Sugar is expecting. OK, so now we have information about the user, but we haven't done anything with it yet. Let's add something in. So I'm going to take this line. All right, so what we've done, connected to Sugar, grabbed a valid copy of the phone number, and connected to the back end using this line right here. And we've actually looked up the user by his phone number. Then down here, what we're going to do is we're going to greet them by name. Hello there, user first name, user last name. I'm glad you called. So let's see if that works.
Hello there, Aaron Seaman. I'm glad you called.
There you go. All right, so we can do more than that. That's just greeting them by name, right? So what else can we do? Let's see. We've got, you know what? We've also got this really fantastic open source calendaring system. Are you guys all familiar with Horde? More nodding. Good. No? Oh, that's right. So Horde, open source groupware, it's been around like forever. In a past life, I was heavily involved with this project, but it's PHP, and I don't do much PHP anymore. But it's a really nice calendar system. It has built-in web, or has built-in email, built-in calendar, built-in to-do lists, all kind of stuff. Right now, we're just interested in the calendar. So I've got this calendar set up here, and I'm actually logged in. If you recall, we looked at Aaron Seaman's contact. His assigned sales rep is this Sally Bronson person. So naturally, being in the same company, I am now Sally Bronson. I'm logged in to her, and I'm looking at her calendar. And I can see right here that I have a meeting scheduled, meeting with Sally Bronson. I suppose I should say Aaron Seaman, but it doesn't. But anyway, this is her calendar. So the next thing we want to do is we want to actually go look in her calendar and let Aaron know when her next appointment is, or that there is an appointment coming up. So let's go grab some Horde bits. I wrote a little bit of code here that, and I'll show it to you if you like. Looks sort of like this. It uses XML-RPC to connect to Horde. The good news is, again, this is a library, so you can just install it. OK, so we've connected to Horde, or I should say, loaded the Horde library. And we are going to use this method to look up the next event for the assigned sales rep. You can see that here. We want Horde get first calendar entry. And we've taken this user record returned from Sugar, grabbed the assigned user ID, and used that to look up the calendar. So now we've got a handle on the next event. Let's also include that by actually telling the caller what the next meeting is, right? You know what? I should probably answer the line before I say things. There we go. All right, let's try this. Restart the application.
Hello there, Aaron Seaman. I'm glad you called. Your next meeting is meeting with Sally Bronson.
So there you go. Now, I'm taking really small samples of data. Obviously, the information returned from Sugar and returned from Horde is much richer. You can pull out the date and time. You can pull out the location. You can pull out the other attendees and do all kind of stuff with that. But I leave that as an exercise to your imagination. OK, so what else? So we're talking to the caller, and that's all well and good. But wouldn't it be nice if Sally got an instant message when the call came in? So let's do that. So I'm going to paste this line in here. And I've created this little helper method called instant message, and I'll show you. It's like 4 lines of code. but it tells you where the message is going, and I've routed it to me since I'm logged in here. And we're going to send a message that says, you just got a call from, and we'll put the person's name in there. So let me go add this method in. So this little helper here that I've added, you can see this is the, it's 4 lines. You create the message using message new. You set the destination to the provided destination. You set the text of the message to the provided text, and then you send it on its way. So we got that. One other thing you need to do is you need to actually activate this plugin. The XMPP is a plugin in the Adhearsion terminology. So I have the configuration right here. It's these 3 lines. That will enable it. So it's enabled, and turn that back down. Let's go restart the application so we get a connection to instant messaging. All right. All good. And make sure I'm logged in. I am. Let's try it again.
Hello there, Aaron Seaman. I'm glad you called. Your next meeting is meeting with Sally Bronson.
Ah. Oh, I just got a call from Aaron. That's pretty cool. Now, this goes a lot further. We're barely scratching the surface. As I mentioned earlier, XMPP is awesome because among the possibilities of having the phone system talk to you like this and even integrate data from Sugar, like we've already pulled in, you can also talk back to it. So you can tell it, call Aaron back for me. I haven't done that, but it would not be that much more work to do that. You can also add presence information. So every time that call comes in, if your status on your instant messenger is out to lunch, it'll just directly send the call to voicemail rather than sending it to you. So XMPP is pretty powerful stuff. All right, so I have one more thing we're going to try here. We're a really public company. We like to brag about all the interactions we have with our customers. So we're going to tweet. We are going to tweet that we have talked to Aaron, because Aaron's an exciting person. So first thing I'll do is I will load the Twitter library. And all this require here does is set up the tokens. Twitter uses OAuth, so you have to get tokens that authorize this application to tweet on behalf of another. For a developer, it's a few clicks through their website. I did it in about 10 minutes. Honestly, the Twitter thing was the easiest of all of these. I spent about 30 minutes just figuring out how to read Sugar's database. Mostly the phone number thing. Man, that threw me for a loop. All right, so let's add a tweet. I'm going to pull these in right here. All right, so if the internet provides, what should happen is we'll go through this whole thing again, announce the person's name, announce the next event, we'll get an instant message, and then we will tweet to the world that we just talked to the person. All right, let's restart the app one more time. And let's give it a ring.
Hello there, Aaron Seaman. I'm glad you called. Your next meeting is meeting with Sally Bronson.
All right, instant message. Check. Now let's go see Twitter. And I'm using this account that I've set up here called Speak Magic. Oh, that one didn't work. I promise it worked earlier. Okay, well, I think you get the idea. But the customer has one more requirement. It turns out that he doesn't like the sound of a man's voice when he answers the call. Picky. But we can fix that. Let's use, so how many people in here have worked with text-to-speech with Asterisk or at all? Okay, a handful of you, maybe a third of you. Have you guys used SSML, Speech Synthesis Markup? Do you know what it is? You have? Okay, a little bit, all right. Do you guys know what it is? No, shaking heads. Okay, Speech Synthesis Markup. So text-to-speech is great, right? But if you've ever played with it, you've almost certainly had it try to pronounce a word and had to laugh at how badly it butchered it, right? Because vowels became short when they should be long, or who knows what. So you end up spelling things funny to try to make them work with text-to-speech. It's not good. So other things that you may want to do is maybe you want to make the rate of speech faster if the text-to-speech robot's too slow. So Speech Synthesis Markup is a W3C standard. It's an XML document that allows you to describe how the media engine should play back the text-to-speech. It's XML. There's a guy in the Ruby community named Aaron Patterson, and his his saying for XML is like violence. If it's not solving all of your problems, you're not using enough of it. Fortunately, we don't have to use that much of it. So my friend Ben Langfeld created this really handy-dandy library called Ruby Speech that uses Ruby to generate SSML. So that's what these few lines here do. Pull this out. OK, so all we want to do right now is we want to change the playback from a man's voice to a woman's voice. So what this does is it wraps the string. You can see string the string. That's the actual text we're going to play back. It wraps that with a wrapper that says play this as a woman. So let's try that.
Hello there, Aaron Seaman. I'm glad you called. Your next meeting is meeting with Sally Bronson.
OK, we're not going to go through the rest of that. But he's still not happy. He really wants a British accent. OK, we'll do it with a British accent. One last time. Oh, and let me just show you what I did there rather than go right past it. So you can change the document language, which is this is an XML construct. So all we're doing is we're hinting to the speech engine that this should be interpreted as if a British person were saying it. And you can use any language code. One thing you should know is that these language codes are not only engine-specific, but voice-specific. So you will actually need to license the voice for British versus US English, or whatever you happen to be using. OK.
Hello there, Aaron Seaman. I'm glad you called. Your next meeting is meeting with Sally Bronson.
There you go. So that's pretty cool. And that wasn't all that much work. All right, so before I go any further, any questions on any of this so far? Yes?
Do you have another window with what's going on with Asterisk at the same time where you're doing I guess, to interact with Amy, but.
Right. So the question is, do I have another window that shows what's going on with Asterisk? Yes, I have two possible ways to see that. The first is that to make things a little nicer, I turn the logging up to what you would see in production, which is info level. But if you really want to see everything that's going on, you can go into the configuration here and change info to debug or even trace. So let me do this first, and I'll show you what that looks like. Make that real big. So you can actually see every AMI command that goes back and forth. And these are written to the logs, and you can use these to parse later. In fact, we have a tool that will go back and parse adhesion logs and generate a flow graph of the call was answered, the call was connected, we played a sound file. We'll even graph if the call blows up, it'll show a little exclamation point. You can see what went wrong. Of course, the other way to look at this would be to get on the actual Asterisk console. There are lots of ways to debug there. But yes, we do log that if you need such a thing. Useful for debugging. Any other questions on what we've seen so far? Yes, in the back.
How does this affect performance of Asterisk?
So the question is, how does this affect performance of Asterisk and FreeSwitch? So if you're not using it, having the connection has negligible or no impact. But that's probably not the question you're asking. It depends a lot on what you're trying to do. If you are trying to do something that's very complicated and requires a lot of calls to a lot of web services, each of those web services can eat up a small amount of time. The good news is you can also now separate that load into multiple instances. So for example, we have one customer that has 15 Asterisk boxes, and they have 5 Adhearsion servers, and they're clustered. And so they are able to round robin and load balance and scale those out. In the past, I used to say that we typically would see Asterisk bottleneck before the Adhearsion application. And while that's still true to some degree, it's not entirely fair because every application is different. But in a very simple application where you're just playing audio files, there's not much performance impact.
In the system you just talked about, how many active calls at one time?
How many active calls in that one system? I don't know on that system. I can quote you a number from a different customer that has just one Asterisk box, and they've placed over 5 million calls this year. So it does work. Yes?
When you restart it, if there's any active calls, will it die?
If you restart Adhearsion, or if there are active calls, will it die? We make great attempts to not. So you can either hit Control-C or you can send a SIG term. In either event, Adhearsion will log it. And I don't think you can see it on the screen. receiving SIGINT. It'll then check to see how many calls are connected to Adhearsion. If there are calls connected, it will not shut down. In fact, it'll continue to accept new calls until all the calls are gone, then it'll come down. If you hit Control-C or send SIGTERM again, it will stop accepting new calls, but still complete existing calls. If you do it a third time, it will attempt to actually hang up the calls and then shut down. So we do make an attempt to not dump people when we restart. Yes?
Is this running the speech synthesis locally?
Yes, the question is it running speech synthesis locally? Yes. Actually, what you just heard was LumenVox, and it's a really nice engine. So this is actually running in 2 VMs. The Asterisk and Adhearsion instance is running in 1 VM, and LumenVox is running in another. You don't have to do it that way. I did it because I had 2 dev VMs from other projects that I just repurposed. But yes, it is all running locally. Yes?
Do you have this kind of demos and this kind of stuff up on a site somewhere where we can like download code?
Do I have these demos up online where you can see them? I will push these to GitHub, which is where all of our code resides. I'll just put a Astricon repository. Let me warn you, it's messy code. This is optimized for demonstration purposes and not for runtime, but it should demonstrate the point. Any other questions? Yes?
So when you run under JRuby, has there been anyone who's used other JVM languages, Python, Clojure?
You mean in the same
Java?
process?
Yeah, just to interact with the Adhearsion application.
So the question is, when we've run Adhearsion in JRuby, has anyone used other languages to interact with Adhearsion? Not that I know of. I know you can. I know that we have used JDBC because it was a really convenient way to connect to Oracle, and there are not that many convenient ways to connect to Oracle. So in that case, we were actually invoking Java libraries from Ruby. Maybe that partly answers your question, but as far as other people,
Yeah, I was more thinking the other way of
The other way.
Adhearsion applications from the Java code.
so invoking Adhearsion's application of Java code is theoretically possible. I have not tried it. Okay, I think we're running out of time, so I'm going to try one more demo. So my friend Tim Panton, who's standing in the back of the room, on Tuesday, was telling me that he was in the running for the most dangerous demo award at Astricon. And I'm a little competitive. So I decided, all right, I will try something even more dangerous. If you are risk averse, you may wish to leave the room. Here's what's going to happen. I have here in front of me, this thing's called an AR drone. You guys seen one of these before? Sort of a hobby project of mine. It's really fun. So sometimes I have too much time on my hands, and I go and reverse engineer wire protocols. And so I actually re-implemented the entire communication stack for the AR drone in Ruby, because why not? So I have that running here. You can see my console. Now, if this works, I'll call into the system. It will greet me and tell me that it's ready to fly. I will push a button, and it will take off. Stand back. All right.
Prepare to take flight.
Okay. So yeah, you can do anything with Ruby. Any questions on that? No? Cool. Well, thank you all very much. You've been a really great audience. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'll be around most of the rest of the day. And find me online. Oh, I'll put my contact information back up so you can see me. There you go. Adhearsion project, adhearsion.com, and I'm Ben Klang. Thanks very much.